Hey guys, welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fellas channel. My name is Cameron Lawrence, and just like every other week before, we are discussing buy lows and sell highs. We got 6 of them, 3 of each, and let me say this might be our most solid lineup yet. I'm excited to get into these guys, and I think if we've learned anything so far, that it is much better to be early on these guys by a week or so than it is to be late on these guys. I don't want to keep harping on Raheem Mostert, but I said back in week 3 that you should be buying or selling high on him rather, and then he pops up for 50 points. But now if you're trying to sell him this week, most of your league mates aren't going to want him because they see A-Chain as the lead back. And so yes, you would have missed out on the 50-point week, but you also would have moved off of him at the right time. So I don't want to spend any more time on that. So let's dive into these 6 players. And real quick before we do, make sure to turn on those notifications and hit that subscribe button because you don't want to miss our trade targets for the rest of the season. But our first buy low is Mr. Jaylen Waddle. And let's just look at Jaylen Waddle from a team standpoint. His quarterback has 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns through 4 weeks. They've already put up 70 points in a week. From the wide receiver perspective, it's Tyreek Hill and then Braxton Berrios is the next wide receiver up. So his role as the wide receiver 2 in this offense is cemented. And last year, Jaylen Waddle has 75 receptions on 117 targets for 1,356 yards and 8 touchdowns. He was a guy we did warn you about coming into the year that he was more of a big play guy. He still is that kind of player. And then he's going to rely on these plays down the field. He's going to rely on being able to get into space to have these bigger games. So this was something we knew coming in, but at this point, with where he's at being outside the top 50 wide receivers, managers might be getting a little nervous that he hasn't seen more than 6 targets in a game, despite how well the Dolphins have been playing. He's seen 5, 6, and 5, finishing outside the top 30 in each of his 3 healthy games. But he is on a team, guys, that has thrown the ball 35 times a game. He is on a team who has put up major points and is only going to continue to get better as the season goes on. Jaylen Waddle, we've seen it the last 2 seasons. We know how good of a player he is. He is a guy that you need to be investing in right now especially if there's any panic at all from the Jaylen Waddle manager. A guy that you could probably sell high to go get Jaylen Waddle. I don't know if you could do 1-for-1 right now, but he could be part of the packages. DJ Moore. Do I think that DJ Moore is going to be a bust? Absolutely not. Do I think he's going to be seeing 20 points in a row or multiple times in a row? No, I don't. Because last season, Justin Fields, that's the big thing. It's Justin Fields as a quarterback. It was the same when Sam Darnold was his quarterback at the start of last year or 2 years ago. I don't remember now. My years are getting jumbled. We saw him put up 30 points in a week. It was DJ Moore through the first 4 weeks was a top 5 wide receiver and then fell off. Not because DJ Moore got worse, but because his quarterback situation was not where we want it to be to see elite numbers. Last year, Justin Fields threw for 200 yards twice. And he only threw for multiple touchdowns 5 times. And those games only overlapped once. So he only had 1 game last year with 200 plus passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns. That is it. That is not a big passing pie. And yes, this season, he has already hit that mark 3 times, 200 yards. He did just throw 335 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. But it was against the Denver Broncos, who might be the only team worse right now than the Chicago Bears. So my concern with DJ Moore is less about DJ Moore and more about the offense that he's in. I still think he can have great weeks. I still think at the end of this season, he's going to be a top 24 wide receiver. But I don't think he has wide receiver 1 upside. I don't even think he has top 15 wide receiver upside. So if you can sell him in that range, you are getting a big win off of DJ Moore. And I think that's what we need to keep in mind for these sell highs. So that is why I'm selling high on DJ Moore. I just don't think the passing pie is going to be big enough to support top 15 wide receivers on the season. This next buy is going to be a gross name for some of you, but it is Joe Mixon. Because sometimes volume is king. Mixon has seen 15 attempts and 4 targets and is averaging 4 targets a game. Last 2 games have been a little more disappointing with targets, but overall about 4 targets a game. And he's playing over 75% of snaps. That's what we need to keep in mind, is that this is his backfield. Nobody's going to come take it from him. The Bengals are going to rely on him again for this season. And he hasn't boomed, and that's because he's only found the end zone once. He is also playing along Joe Burrow, so on top of him only having 1 week of 14 fantasy points as his best week so far, on top of that, people are scared about this offense. And I think rightfully so, they should be scared about the way Joe Burrow looks, because if the Bengals don't allow him to get healthy, if he can't figure out how to get healthy, they're going to be in trouble for weeks to come. And hopefully with their week 7 bye, they can start to figure it out a little bit. But this offense could definitely be in trouble if Burrow can't figure that out. However, I still think that Mixon is going to see enough volume to be a top 15 back again. Mixon has been a top 15 back each of his last 4 healthy seasons. And in all those seasons, he hasn't even averaged over 4.1 yards per carry. So what that shows me is that he doesn't even have to be efficient. He doesn't even have to be relatively good in order to finish as a top 15 running back in this offense, just because they're going to continue to use him. Obviously, it's going to come down to touchdown production, making sure the receptions stay up. But if Joe Burrow's not going to get healthy, he's going to have to start checking it down to Joe Mixon again. And I think that's something that we could see more and more throughout the weeks. And guys, I don't love saying it. Joe Mixon was a guy I was in on the last 2 years. This season, I was backing off of Joe Mixon, but they're just not taking over in the backfield from him. They're just allowing him to continue to produce in his Joe Mixon kind of way. And so as long as that volume's there, he's got to be looked at as a top 15 running back. So I think he's a guy you can buy. And he plays Arizona and Seattle these next 2 games. So these could be 2 very good games for Joe Mixon. A player that you want to sell is another volume play, and that is Alexander Mattison. The only problem with Alexander Mattison being a volume play is the volume is going to start going away. He's actually looked better. He's a guy that we've critiqued about the Vikings of just Najee Harris level of efficiency. And Najee in his own right has looked a little bit better as well. For Mattison in the last 2 weeks, he's run at 4.65 yards per carry and 5.5 yards per carry. But he was also playing 2 of the worst rush defenses in the NFL. What is nerve-wracking for me about Alexander Mattison, right? If the Cam Akers acquisition. If that doesn't happen, I would say to hold on to Alexander Mattison. But Mattison had played 73% of snaps, 76, 80% of snaps against the Chargers, and then this last week was down to 69%. And Cam Akers played 29% himself, Ty Chandler taking 1 of those snaps in that game. And along with the snap volume coming back down a little bit, the receiving dropped. He went 4 targets, 6 targets, 7 targets, and last week saw 1 target, whereas Cam Akers saw 2 targets. And if you want to go, well, they're going to keep using him because we finally saw the efficiency go up. Cam Akers averaged 8 yards per carry against the Carolina Panthers. So as Cam Akers begins to get used to this team, as Cam Akers begins to get integrated into this offense, this is going to just continue to find its way closer to a 50-50 split. And when you have a volume guy like Alexander Mattison, a 50-50 split is not what you want to see, and that's something that we're already seeing in Pittsburgh with Najee Harris this season. Our next buy is a guy that I said you should even be looking to buy high on last week. Now I think you can buy him at a discount after what we just saw, but it's Chris Olave. Yeah, last week was really, really bad. 1 catch on 4 yards. I get it. It was ugly. It was disgusting. And I understand as well, he's the wide receiver 36 on the season, but Chris Olave before last week was coming off 3 straight games of 10 plus targets, averaging 7 receptions and 100 yards a game. He was a touchdown each week from being a top 5 wide receiver on the week. That's what you need to keep in mind. Chris Olave hasn't scored a touchdown yet. If Chris Olave was wide receiver 36 with 2 touchdowns, then yeah, you have a reason to be concerned. But he has no touchdowns, and last week was in major part, pretty much the whole thing was because Derek Carr was playing injured. Derek Carr probably shouldn't have played last week with his AC joint injury, and the 2 times that he did target Chris Olave down the field, he missed him completely. Chris Olave had multiple routes. My guy Tyler Platt, He runs our waiver wire video. One of the other fellas did a full breakdown for me and Lucas. We got to get him to be putting it out there for you guys now. But he did a full breakdown on what was happening, and what he noticed, what he saw, was that Derek Carr wasn't wanting to take shots on the field. Hence, Alvin Kamara, 13 receptions, 33 receiving yards. Right? He just wanted to dink and dime the ball. He didn't want to take a hit, and who can blame him? Right? He's suffering the AC shoulder injury. But Olave is going to quickly become, once Carr either gets healthy or they have him sit out and have Jameis playing, Olave is going to quickly see his buy window shut because the touchdowns are going to start coming. Even if he has 6 or 7, that's going to be enough to propel him top 12, top 10 wide receiver status because of how good he has been on the field. And our final sell is Garrett Wilson. And I do want to say he's different from the other two on this list because I don't know if I consider him a sell high because I'm not actively going out and looking to sell Garrett Wilson, right? I don't think that there is that pressure as the same as a Alexander Mattison, the same as a DJ Moore to sell him. But you're just trying to sell him based off of how well Zach Wilson did this last week, right? Zach Wilson had if you go watch our podcast, I talked about his best completions percentage in any game with over 30 pass attempts. It was only his 6th time going over 250 passing yards, right? It was his first time having 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. So you want to capitalize on the fact that Garrett Wilson saw 14 targets and that Zach Wilson had an anomaly on prime time against the Chiefs where everyone was watching, that someone goes, this could be what Zach Wilson is rest of the season. I just don't believe that is what he's going to be. And the only reason I'm trading Garrett Wilson is to trade up for a top 10 wide receiver, a CeeDee Lamb, and a Amon-Ra. You're not going to be able to trade Garrett Wilson straight up for those guys, but you're going to have to add in a package. But if he is the centerpiece of that package that you're trading up to get CeeDee, Amon-Ra, then that is when I'd be looking to sell high on Garrett Wilson. I'm not just looking to trade him just to get somebody else. And I don't feel the pressure this week. But if you're looking for a guy who you go, who could I capitalize a little more than usual? Garrett Wilson would be that guy. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Buy Low, Sell High. We'll be back again next week. Podcast will be out tomorrow. Lucas will be here on Friday with our must starts of the week. Ty will be back with our waiver wire video. We got so much content for you guys. So don't forget to hit that notification button. Don't forget to subscribe. And guys, good luck this week. Go make some moves. Let's go win some championships. Deuces.